Exactly a year ago today, two fathers changing a flat tyre in the southwest lost their lives when a long-distance truck driver dozed off at the wheel. His truck left the road and ran the men down. That tragedy triggered a push to improve regulations governing the industry and to weed out rogue operators who are pushing drivers beyond their limits. Charlotte Hamlin reports.
This is an industry in crisis. You're 16 times more likely to be killed in the transport industry than any other industry in Australia.
There's certainly rumours within the industry that dodgy things are being done.
I got the phone call from the police saying they're at my home, they're waiting with my two boys and I must please come home. And I knew when I walked through that front door my life would change forever.
A year ago today, Albert De Beer stopped to help a perfect stranger change a tyre on the side of the road. Mr De Beer and David Tagliaferri were both heading home after work. They'd called their wives to say they were on their way. On the side of Old Coast Road in Myalup, the Good Samaritan and the man he'd stopped to help were chatting together after changing the wheel. Without warning, they were run down when a semi-trailer veered off the road. Albert De Beer died before help arrived. David Tagliaferri made it to hospital, but staff were unable to save him. Since their deaths, Albert's wife Suzanne and David's sister Lisa Sawyer have come together to support one another.
They were just so carefree, down to earth, happy. And I think I can just see them sitting out there, probably having a cold beer on a Sunday afternoon over, a steak sandwich or something and having a good laugh. Because, I just think they would have really, really got on quite well together.
In January, the driver of the semi-trailer, Paul Kershaw, was found guilty of dangerous driving causing death and was jailed for 4 years. The court was told he'd been driving for more than 13 hours before he hit the men, and witnesses reported seeing him driving erratically, swerving across traffic lanes in the lead-up to the crash. Judge Alan Fenbury found it was likely Kershaw had fallen asleep at the wheel. He'd become drowsy and affected by the prescription medication detected in his system. He's one of several drivers from Southwest-based transport company Mears Freight Lines who've been involved in serious crashes in recent years. 3 occurred in the past year.
I left with a concern in my heart, feeling that there's more wrong.
Mrs De Beer and Miss Sawyer say while the driver is paying for his part in the incident, his employer and the wider industry need to be held accountable.
It's almost like when an oil light goes on in your car, the goal shouldn't be to get the oil light off because then you can basically just disconnect it. But that doesn't mean you've got oil in your car. And I thought this is like that, just putting Mr. Kershaw in jail is almost like just disconnecting the oil light. There's more going on.
When contacted, Mears didn't return calls.
Send over to talk to them, just get them rotated.
Tim Keys and Mark Mazza run a transport company in Bunbury. They say the trucking industry is under immense pressure from rising fuel costs and taxes, workers leaving it for the mining industry, and competition from some operators who employ drivers with bad records. Drivers, they say, shouldn't be on the roads.
It is a big risk. I mean, the standard road train runs down the road at 79.5 tonne. It's a huge vehicle and it takes a lot of stopping. It needs a professional driver that's capable of driving it and in the right frame of mind to drive it.
Tim Keys says some companies operating in WA make it difficult for those who are trying to do the right thing while keeping their businesses viable.
It's basically showing the route that it's taken over the progression of the day.
His trucks use monitoring equipment that can track the vehicle, recording when it starts, when it stops and for how long.
95 to 99% of the transport companies that we deal with, and we deal with a lot of transport companies, they take pride in presenting vehicles that are not only presentable but safe on the road. But like any industry, if it's not regulated to the extent that it covers the entire industry, there's going to be rogue elements that cut corners and try and save costs.
The Transport Workers Union says the long-haul trucking industry has a bad reputation and for good reason. Rick Burton fields constant complaints from truck drivers who say they're concerned for their own lives and those of others on the roads, but are too scared to speak up. He says not enough is being done to investigate companies who are doing the wrong thing.
we have our members coming to us complaining that they are working 19 hours a day, are very hesitant to have us going there and raise their name of fears of retribution from the company. So we pass these complaints on to WorkSafe, and that's as far as it goes. It's up to WorkSafe to investigate it.
I've spoken to a number of drivers who've either lost their jobs or left companies because they say they were under pressure to work excessive hours and falsify their logbooks. Some say they worked shifts of 22 hours or more. One driver told me he frequently worked a 90-hour week. WorkSafe says it conducts regular fatigue management roadblocks and proactive campaigns in the industry, but it needs concrete evidence of a company's wrongdoing to be able to launch an investigation. Following Paul Kershaw's court case, the Transport Minister Troy Buswell asked Main Roads to investigate Mears Freightline's operations.
Some people within the industry have raised concerns about this particular operator. I know that the family of the two deceased gentlemen have raised concerns and we'll do all that we can to investigate their compliance with every aspect of the law that Main Roads has control over.
New compliance and enforcement legislation is expected to be introduced this year that will see higher penalties for flouting fatigue and maintenance regulations. They'll apply not only to drivers, but their employers and the customer that hires them, a chain of responsibility.
Everybody's got a role to play in making sure that the trucks comply with every piece of legislation and enforcement that sits around the industry.
The Road Transport Association believes the laws will make a difference.
I think you're going to see companies becoming far more aware of where their trucks are, what they're doing 24/7, and that's the crucial thing. So they know if a driver is going to tear the skin a bit and drive extra hours, they'll be caught.
While these changes have come too late for the families of Albert De Beer and David Tagliaferri, they hope the deaths of their loved ones will serve as a reminder and help drive the process of reform.
It won't save our loved ones, but it might
somebody
save someone else's. I'm really hoping that it brings some kind of change.